Welcome, everybody. It's absolutely wonderful to be here today, coming from Ireland. Second visit in about 25 years, so it's just fantastic to be back here in Boston. So we have some wonderful stories here today. What I would like to do is maybe ask each panel member just to give us a little bit of information in your own words about your own work. So we'll just pass down the microphone first. And then I will ask each of you a couple of questions, if that's okay. So we'll start with yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Siri from Yankee Rock Farm. And as a shepherd and a shearer, I come into the wool world from that perspective. So I've had sheep for most of my life. I love the creatures and I love everything they produce, but I was never really into fiber arts, and probably out of everyone in this room, I'm still one of the more novice fiber artists. I just love the animals. Their impact on communities and land can be so positive. That's why I'm here to talk about fiber. And then, of course, as a shearer, I am a pivotal person in that wool harvest. Again, not much of a fiber artist, but I work for so many fiber producers and fiber artists. So bringing in that perspective of before you're buying the product, what goes on before that.
My name is Sonya. I have a pattern company called 100 Acts of Sewing, but I guess soon it will probably morph into 100 Acts of Sewing and Knitting. I started, my journey has been sort of a wayward one as things go, that I started knitting when everybody else, knitting caught back on or, came back into fashion at the beginning of the 2000s. I jumped on that train. I'd learned how to sew in middle school, but I was a very impatient sewer and was very frustrated by the idea that the pictures in my head never came to fruition. The product always did not match. Knitting was different. I was able to, to use the term from Catch-22, grok it, that it was more forgiving. And actually, no, Stranger in a Strange Land, sorry, wrong book. And so I knit for many years. I was talking to somebody about how a dearest ambition was to have a pattern in knitty. That never happened. It might still, but and then came upon sewing. Sort of tripped upon it. Started this project. Bless you. And that turned into making teaching classes. Turned into making patterns. Turned into writing a book. And what really fascinates me is, or where my passion really is teaching people, because it made such an impact in my life, just learning these skills and being able to make my clothes. Because, knitting your entire wardrobe is very slow going. And I feel that knitting and sewing really are quite great bedfellows. And it uses those two when you want something quickly versus want something that takes time. And so I really am passionate about teaching people and enjoy keeping those skills alive.
Okay, I'm Liz, and I own and operate Kingdom Fleece and Fiberworks, which is a fiber mill in East Hardwick, Vermont, which is in the Northeast Kingdom. I started the mill in 2007 when my girls were little. I don't even remember, I've always been doing some kind of fiber art, something. So I've kind of, I'm trying to think of, I started that. And then when I moved up to Vermont and started the mill, I've always just been, I'm the middle one. So Siri's at the beginning, she's doing the patterns. And so, yeah, exactly. And I'm in the middle. So I'm more concentrating on after Siri shears them, they're dropping off the fiber to me. And then we're creating, whether they want roving or yarn. I'm actually I really want to try and get more weavers so that way we can have some more finished products. and some, machine knitters, so that way they can have, whether that, the people that are, all these farmers have a finished product to sell, because there's kind of a lull in the middle. We can make the yarn, she can shear the sheep, but there's nobody here to like a lot of the finished product. It's hard to get finished products out. So that's what I'm really trying to do, is kind of, with the mill, find more artists, find more people that are going to be, whether, they can have knitting machines, or, so that way there's more in between, and, you can find that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. So, Siri, I'm going to start with you. I mean, you're the youngest on the panel here. As a young woman, do you find that there's challenges for you as a young woman in agriculture, in the sheep industry?
Absolutely. And sheep shearing globally wasn't really introduced to women until the 1970s, before I was born, but not before my mom was born. So it's very easy for me to conceptualize that generation of women who being a sheep shearer wasn't even a choice. It wasn't an option. Not only was it not an option, but when a woman walked into a shearing shed, there's a phrase that would be yelled out so that the shearers would stop. Like, we can't even work in front of the women. So that's not that far in the past. And I know people who lived through that. And it's different today. I'm a successful shearer. There's hurdles, there's less hurdles, but I think about that all the time, that it was only really one generation ago that made it possible for me to consider this as a young kid with sheep, that I could grow up to be a shearer. And I still show up to jobs, and someone sees me get out of my vehicle, and I've been asked, "Are you sure you can do this?" Like, yeah, it's just my full-time job. I just see 12,000 animals a year, no problem. So yeah, it's little comments here and there. Certainly people doubt me. I definitely have to do a better job than the men that I'm shearing next to in order to be considered equal to them. We face it all the time, but haven't been beaten down by it yet, just motivated even more.
Fantastic, very inspiring. And I think that is a situation that we would have in Ireland as well, that there's less women shearers in Ireland, and obviously those who are shearers do have to prove themselves that much harder. And it's the world that we live in at the moment, is that women seem to have to prove themselves. So we are now pushing the equity of women further. And I think within the agricultural field, pardon the pun, that is definitely moving forward in the future. So another question I want to ask you as well, in Ireland we have issues in relation to the presentation of wool. So I'm not too sure how the presentation of wool here in Ireland from the farmers, because what's happening in Ireland, it is when it's sheared, the farmers are not taking the care that they should be taking in processing and presenting the wool. It's going into a big bag and then getting contaminated. And then, of course, that affects the cost of the wool. Do you find that is an issue here as well? Is it something that is quite globally an issue because of the value of wool in relation to synthetic fibers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find myself in a tough spot because like I said, I'm farmer first, and I'm animal focused and a farmer advocate before I think about this finished product. So I'm kind of spanning the gap between, say, the customer here and the farmer who wants to do a good job but doesn't necessarily know how. That education is missing, or the market is missing and the price is missing. So if that farmer has been offered a commercial price for their wool, that might be 5 or 10 cents a pound, why would they put in any effort to keep it clean, to bag it right, to present it better? So we're kind of in this self-deteriorating loop of, well, I tell the farmer what they can do better, and they say, yeah, I'd love to, but 5 cents doesn't justify that. And so it's bridging the gap. You have to create the market, find the price, bring it back to the farmer for them to make change, and then get them to commit to that change. So I find in the fiber arts world, a lot of people want to blame the farmer who isn't bedding their sheep right or skirting well or packaging well. And sure, there's some farmers that are going to say, I don't care. There's a lot of farmers that want to care. They will put in the work, just not for 5 cents a pound. And who can blame them for that? So it's a problem I see we got to work on from both ends.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you one last question. I was looking through your website and I was very not taken aback, very impressed, I should say, on your writing skills. I love how you describe on your blogs, whatever you're talking about, your descriptive words. My sister is a writer. She's an author and that, and I know she would just love to read your blog, so I will be passing that on. But what spurs you on to write like that? And I suppose, how important is it to get that conversation out to the public?
Yeah, I got started in 4-H. I was an extremely shy kid. I had a really hard time in school, making friends, connecting with people. And so from a very young age, animals and being outdoors kind of saved me in a way. It allowed me to find that voice. And so I wasn't necessarily the writer back then that I am now, but I think that's what it came from is I wrote a blog recently and said something about being with animals in wide open spaces under open sky. I felt like my best self. And so that really inspires my writing is it's where I'm most comfortable, where the world comes alive to me. And like I said, I was such a shy kid, I could hardly carry out a conversation with anyone, but I could tell you about my animals. I was excited and motivated about that. So obviously I got over my public speaking fears and all of that, and now turn a lot of those emotions into writing because there's so many people that can't come to the farm. And that's okay. I don't think everybody needs to be on the farm. Everybody doesn't need to have sheep and grow their own food, but they need to understand what goes into it, the good and the bad. I really like to write about some of the heartache that we deal with, some of the struggles we have. So it's not just this romantic image of being in the garden and frolicking with the sheep. It's blood, sweat, and tears a lot of days, but it's still beautiful. And so I like to write it and put it out there so that people can have some idea, have some respect for it, and maybe just get inspired to know more about it or think more about it back in their day-to-day life.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we need you over in Ireland. So I'm going to move on to Sonya. Sonya, I would class you as a conscious creative. Somebody who is very in tune with yourself and authentic. So your backstory, obviously, craft and culture and knitting and sewing and all that is very culturally grounded in yourself and in your family and your heritage. So for you, what you're an artist as well. So as a conscious creative, how do you bring that into your art and into your sewing and your whole business in a sense that as an artist you would have to be able to depict something that maybe other people would be afraid to talk about. So as a conscious creative, how do you bring that into your work?
That's a very lovely way of putting that. I have to remember that. Have a new descriptor because honestly, I feel a lot of it maybe comes from just having a very short attention span and having getting bored with things and then being like, oh, what's this new thing? And so, or just going wherever the wind and my interest takes me. I guess, I was just something that Siri was talking about in her answer to the question, just it made me think about when you were saying that not everybody needs to be in a farm, not everybody needs to get sheep. I feel that really resonates with me in that not everybody needs to make their own clothes. Not everybody needs to, be walking around in clothes that they, either fabric that they wove or everything is handmade. I don't see that as realistic. We don't have the time, the capacity, etc. But I do feel that knowing how to sew, or at least having some idea of the work that goes in, then makes you appreciate it. And I feel like that's the way that I came into what I do, was having an appreciation of handmade things, really loving loving craft, loving just that the maker's hand is evident in a piece, and also knowing, having connection to it. I'm not going to remember the person's name, but there was a woman in the UK who did it was called The Craft of Work, and it was a study, and she had categories that she put clothes that she would go around and ask people. She would go into cities and ask people to bring garments that they felt were meaningful to them, and she put in categories, and some of them were either, did they make this garment? Was it a provenance that they bought it somewhere and it held a special memory? Did this belong to somebody? And then she just had them talk. She took their photo and had them talk about it. And I loved that idea of having those. That firstly, she categorized. There were several of them, several categories. Those are the only ones I could remember. But just that like emotional connection to a garment, to a piece of clothing. And I feel like a lot of times these days, it's just everything is sped up so much as far as production with fast fashion, and we don't really have that emotional connection to clothes. Or if we do, we don't necessarily ourselves have the capacity or don't know where to get something repaired, because those places, the spaces are not there anymore. That you might have the random dry cleaner that does some alterations or some repair, but we're losing that as a society. So I don't really know if I answered your question, but
No, absolutely perfect. I think I know you are a conscious creative, so because you're conscious of the impact that you have, and also the impact that your ideas have on your community. Going back to the fast fashion, I mean, we have a very big problem at the moment, and it's growing and it's getting bigger. And I mean, when you look back in the 1980s, people would buy maybe 15 garments a year. Now people buy about 68 to 70 new garments a year. So the amount of production that we have within the fast fashion industry is actually mind-boggling and very worrying. But with yourself as a slow fashion is what you're encouraging, and the resilience of that. How do we encourage the next generation, the younger people, to accept that this is where we have to move forward. We need to get those skills. How do we get that message across to the next generation?
I feel like they already are realizing that things are not as they should be. I mean, I know that my children, and they're every bit like, well, if you're of a certain age, you love thrift store shopping. Like nobody, like they are wanting all the secondhand clothes, which in and of itself, I mean, it's great, but then that almost the demand then starts outpacing the product, and then you get into its own issues too. So secondhand shopping is not necessarily the answer to things, but I feel that there is a desire to learn these skills of how to make things, how to slow, instead of looking at a screen and creating things with your hands. So I think that it's there, the interest is there. And as someone who uses a sewing machine primarily, it's getting people over that sort of like road bump of fear that a sewing machine a lot of times brings about. So I think just familiarity. I never thought I would be teaching beginning sewing classes, but I do enjoy doing it. It's fun to not have it be surrounded by all these rules. Whenever I talk to people, it always seems like if they learned it in school or 4-H, that there was invariably a very strict kind of mean teacher, but my heart kind of goes out to them now, because if you had a bunch of children with scissors and pins and irons, that you probably really had to keep things in line to not, have serious injury. So, hats off to all of those strict, grumpy teachers.
I agree. I totally agree. So, Liz, last but not least, you're waiting in anticipation. I admire your strength in setting up a mill. I know in Ireland that is one of the things that we really lack. I mean, a lot of our mills have closed over the century. There's the demand is not there anymore. We've lost so much equipment and talent. So you've really taken the bull by the horns, I should say. What made you actually take this giant leap in setting up your own mill?
Honestly, I don't really know. It started because I was an ag major. I'm an ag major. So I have a master's in animal science. So mine was mostly dairy. I did dairy, swine, that kind of stuff. And my sister has a bunch of animals. She got an alpaca. Like when I had my kids were little, she got an alpaca. And then somebody told me, I joined the spinning guild. And then somebody else told me, oh, there's a mill down, and this is in Connecticut. And they told me about a mill. So I ended up going over there with her fleece, with a fleece, her alpaca fleece, and I saw her kids running around, and I said, oh, well, maybe this is something that I could do. So I ended up blindly going into it and talked to my parents. They helped me, helped me invest in everything. And so I just had the carding mill for quite a few years and did that for a long time. And so I was just making the carded roving for hand spinners and stuff like that. So, and when my kids were little too, so I only did it. It was not 100% full time, but so I started doing that, and that was kind of one thing led to another. And then realizing just how much of there is such a need for it for all the people out there that do have fiber animals and need things made. They need all of their fiber processed, and they don't always have the setup at their house. Even if they want to do it by one fleece at a time, maybe somebody can do one, but if they have more than a few sheep, they definitely just, if you're not set up for it, it's kind of impossible. So it definitely made me realize how much you need it.
So, I mean, the fact that you are able to process small farms from their wool on a small scale is really important, because I think we focus on wool in a much larger scale too much. And so it just means that we're giving then the women or the farmers or the men and the women or whatever the opportunity to actually use their wool and not generate the waste. Do you see that any of those farmers that you work within your community, do they have any concerns at the moment in relation to the production of their own wool and their farming practices?
I think so, because I think it's getting harder and harder, and I try really hard working with the small farms, doing the small, people that only have 5 or 10 sheep or something like that, because there's so many people that right now only have that. They don't have room for a farm that has 1,000 sheep. They only have their small spinner's flock, which is great, and it still produces way more fiber than you can ever do with your one sheep. People always say, oh, I got one sheep, but that sheep, by the time they're done spinning, they're already shearing again. So it grows very fast. And so that's really, I think there is still a need for you have the big farms and you have the little, everybody, these mills, I think yeah, you need mills that are huge that can do big quantities, but you can also need a mill like my size that can do and handle, the smaller fleeces. And I think there is a need for, there's definitely a need for that. And I think it helps that, I think it's helping everybody. So.
I think you all have definitely found your niche. You are where you're meant to be, and I think I'm so impressed by the stories here, and the gap that you've all filled. You've found the need, and the need is there. Just in relation to, sustainability and climate change and all that is a big issue at the moment. I'm not going to go into politics, okay? So don't worry, I'm not going to go there. But I think it is everywhere. But obviously, there's big, massive changes happening in the US. But within your own businesses now, and I'm just going to throw this out to the floor, so anybody can take the microphone now. What sustainable practices are you putting into your businesses that you think will actually move forward and maybe unlock? Because I firmly believe that wool is a key to unlocking a more sustainable future. So do you see a practice within your own businesses that will help with a more sustainable future, let's just say? Anybody?
So I think right now, because we are just trying to figure things out, we just started the spinning equipment, and I'd like to. So right now we use wood-fired heat because we heat our house, and the house is attached to the mill. So we use that for our heat, and then I'd love to do more solar. I make sure we use biodegradable soap. I just try and do as much as you can. I think that's the biggest thing, and helping. It'd be really cool if we had a way we could set up and recycle things, and then same with like gathering lanolin, like those kind of things. Right now, it's just not feasible. But if there was a way we could do stuff like that, that would be really cool too, to redo that.
Well, for me, my interest is more. I don't have the capacity or skill set at the moment to do what's called like zero waste pattern making. There are people that do that, and I have great admiration for them. That just means that the patterns are designed in a certain way where every piece is utilized, and I have more interest in, instead of what I call like whole cloth pattern making, where you have your yardage and you're going to lay the pattern on. I like the idea of piecing things together and just that collaging aspect. And I think it brings about more creativity when you do not have like everything at your disposal. And so encouraging that, and then also encouraging mending and remaking what you have to just like give clothes a longer lifespan.
To bring it all back to the farm, I'm sure everyone here is aware of sustainable farming practices, and a lot of farmers are implementing them because of the demand in the market. And so as a shepherd, I got my own sheep, and as a shearer, I've got this huge community, and it's really important to us to set an example on our farm. And so we're going to a year-round grazing system. So our sheep are outdoors 365 days a year. And so people have concerns from an animal welfare standpoint, but what is this fiber that we're all here for? And what do we talk about is how great it is to insulate you, keep you warm, it's waterproofing, all these things. It's the same on the backs of the sheep. So we adjusted our shearing schedule so they can get through the winter easier, but actually these critters can survive outside every day of the year, just like the wild animals that they evolved from. And so it's better for the land, it's better for the people, and I do believe it's better for the sheep. Stuffing sheep inside of barns it's almost impossible to avoid respiratory disease. So that's something we're doing on our farm, and sharing other farmers that experience. And farmers of all types and kinds come under attack all the time. People think about climate change, they think about how awful beef and meat producer, all of that. So farmers are on the defensive for good reason. That kind of makes them want to dig their heels in and not change. And so we like to try and set an example and talk within our own community about ways we as farmers, we're not evil, we're not trying to contribute to climate change, but we can do better. We can improve to be more sustainable, better for the planet, and in turn, better for the people and the sheep as well. So lots of work to do, but I think we're making a go at it.
Fantastic. I have actually one more question for you, Siri, if that's okay, because you got me thinking. In Ireland, we have, and I presume you have over here, we have lots of solar farms. I mean, they just seem to be taking up all our green grass. It's just everywhere. And in the town that I live in, which I'm not going to say, outside the town, there is fields and fields of solar panels. Now, we've always been promised that if there's solar panels, there'll be solar grazing, but that's not happening. So what is your opinion? I mean, I'm not too sure what is happening over here with regard to solar grazing, but is that something that you feel that should be more of or less of, or what's the situation over here in the US and solar grazing, and in your own, I suppose, your own vicinity?
Yeah, as far as solar grazing goes, I can only really speak to the east side of the country here where I've got experience, but it's growing phenomenally. And I don't graze any of my sheep on solar fields myself, but I have tons of clients that do. And so far, it's been extremely lucrative for them. I think the optics here, it's just so positive, and the companies putting up solar panels have figured that out. And it's still probably cheaper to pay a shepherd to bring their sheep in than hire landscapers and mowers all the time. And again, the optics. You know, people around here love to see sheep under solar panels. I think there's zero downside. It's a great way to get animals out and grazing. It's a great way to keep that space around solar panels in agricultural use. Sheep, I might be biased, but sheep are definitely the best animals for it. They will do the least damage to solar panels. Goats and cattle are a bit tougher on the equipment, the fence. So yeah, I think the sky's the limit there for us in the States, and I hope it can happen over there as well, because I don't really see any downside to it.
Thank you. I definitely think that we really need more solar grazing in Ireland. I think we tend to put the infrastructure there and then kind of think, okay, what's next? And it's just you know, we're not following through. So that's something that I will be pushing forward. We're nearly finished, and I would actually, just before we finish, because I know you're all very busy and dying to get back out there and look and see what's happening, but I want to present the three of you ladies something, if that's okay. You may have noticed I'm wearing a Project Dandelion badge. Some of you may know it, some of you may not know it. Project Dandelion is, that was magic. Project Dandelion is actually founded by the former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, and with other ladies in the US. I can't think of their names, it's terrible. And it is about female-led, women-led on issues in relation to climate change. And the idea is that every issue is a climate issue. So I'm a partner with Project Dandelion, and you know, I want to bring wool into that conversation, because every issue is a climate issue. And I would like to present with you three lovely ladies today with your own Project Dandelion badge, should you accept. Don't worry, you don't have to do anything. There's no extra jobs, you know, you've enough to be doing. But I would like to present you because I really feel that your voice really has a place in this project. And I'm just very proud to share this stage with you, three of you today. Okay, thank you so much. So.